What's up, guys? I'm Mr. Second Passport, and today we're going to cover the 4 reasons why I chose Ecuador. Stay till the end of the video, and I will share those reasons with you. Until then, what I'm going to do is just break it down, all the places in the world where I've personally lived, and what was a deal breaker for me in each place compared to South America or Ecuador in specific. For instance, the first place I lived abroad was with a friend in northern Mexico in the city of Chihuahua, right? And let me tell you something, I really liked Mexico, cool place, obviously amazing food, but I just never felt safe. Like this ranking for the year 2020 of the world's most dangerous cities, in the top 12, Mexico has 6. Okay. What about the Dominican Republic? That's me hanging out in the Dominican a few years ago. But let me tell you something. I really enjoyed myself there. But long term, I don't think so. There's a lot of guns with legal right to possess. Just too many for me. And it's too sunny. Like it's super sunny. Like you go to the beach, or maybe you enjoy a carnival parade like this one that I filmed. But you go to the beach and in 30 minutes a fair-skinned guy like me just gets totally burnt to a crisp. So for me it was almost too sunny. I couldn't enjoy that part of it as much as I would have liked. Also, it's not the cheapest place. It doesn't have South America or even Central America prices. The Caribbean is legitly more expensive than maybe even North America for whatever reason. I don't know what it is, but it's just not cheap. It's not a very cheap place to live, comparatively, especially to South and Central America. Now, Panama, as you can see from this video I took outside of my window, it just rains a lot for me. Too much rain, like the type of rain you walk outside and in 1 second you're absolutely soaked. Also, lacking public transport. You really need a car in a place like Panama. I think they learned from the US. Now, I'm here in this video enjoying Colombia, right? That's me in the purple. Having fun. Colombia is an amazing place, don't get me wrong, and really, really spectacularly nice locals that really like foreigners. But, especially in the small towns, but there's a certain uneasiness about living in Colombia. I lived there for over a year in Medellin, and you just have this uneasiness. Like, who are you conversing with? Who are you messing with? You never know. Like, for instance, a roommate of mine thought I was flirting with his girlfriend, and he threatened me to death. And so I moved out, obviously, but he kept stalking me. Like, I don't know. That's not normal, but maybe it is in Colombia. I don't know. But anyway, there's definite drawbacks, and also living in Medellin, it's kind of like living in a hole. I know it was being highly promoted as an expat destination. It probably should be, and you really kind of feel cut off from the rest of the world unless you're traveling around a lot. So that was just kind of my experience, and why I prefer Ecuador, which just kind of feels maybe a little more westernized, a little bit better connected to the rest of the world than Colombia. Now, this is me in the Philippines. Obviously, as you can see, the beaches, some of them are pretty spectacular, but there's big problems with living in the Philippines that you don't realize until you're actually there. For instance, scenes like this, like you're walking from one building to the next, and you can't help but see the immense amount of poverty, like hardcore poverty, all over through and through the Philippines, in every crack, in every nook and cranny. Like, I dated a girl in the Philippines who was literally living with her mom and her baby in like a stick hut, like a Jesus hut, literally bamboo, and they had a dirt floor. Like, I've never met anyone in Ecuador that lived with a dirt floor. Like, it's another level of poverty. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm from middle class America, and I despise it. I like the grime. I think it has character. But, this level of of grime is even for me is a little too much. And plus the food in the Philippines, I ended up in what's one of the few places in the world where I ended up searching out, Western fast food chains to eat because just the local food, I was not digging it at all. Spain, I spent a year in Spain. Amazing place, packed full of totally different cultures and even different languages in this tiny little country. Same as Portugal, very similar. But the problem with Portugal and Spain, like where I was living in Madrid for the whole year, it's up on a plateau and it is cold as hell in the winter. That wind just whips off the plains and smacks you in the face. Even if you're going for just a short walk, it's just not very fun. And in the summertime, it's super sweltering hot. So, definitely something to think about. You have those seasons, which is something I escaped from North America. The beaches in Spain, they kind of look like this, and they're not particularly attractive. They're just beaches, and they're not tropical either. They're legitly cold in the winter. What about China? Now, I did live there for a little less than a year. It was a dream of mine to immigrate to China, so I did it. I caught a bus from Hanoi, Vietnam to the border, and then caught a train to Guangzhou, right near Hong Kong. And I set up shop there and just searched for a job and planned to give it a go. Just went with my backpack. And let me tell you something. I mean, there are things you don't know until you go. Like, I didn't know. Like, there's this river that kind of circumvents China here in the middle. And the government, or so I was told by the locals, the government said, everywhere below this certain river here in the south is not allowed, people are not allowed to have heat in their homes. But it was legitly cold. I was sleeping with a winter jacket on, winter hat, undercovers in the apartment where I was. So it was pretty insanely cold, down here. Even though technically it is supposed to be warmer in the south, which it is super cold inside the house, inside the apartment in southern China in the wintertime. In the summertime, it's quite comfortable. But up here in the north, let me tell you something, the summers are just, like near Beijing, are sweltering hot, and the winters are super cold. It's just super flat up here, super flat plains, like Kansas style flat, and that wind just whips off again and just smacks you in the face again. And so for me, the weather is probably enough to nix China as a long-term destination. What about Korea? Well, one time I was there during Halloween and it was already cold as shit. So, I mean, as nice as the Koreans are and as the cool of a place it is, I don't think it's a place where I would want to live, just because of that weather, deal killer. What about Southeast Asia, like where my brother lives in Thailand with his Thai wife on a farm? This is what I remember about Thailand. You know, all this traffic, just an incredible amount of traffic and people and just sweltering humid heat and trash and just a floodgates of tourists. Just I never saw so many tourists. You It's true that in the south you do have these amazing limestone beaches, but it's just absolutely hoarded with tourists. Just floodgates open full of tourists. I swear you see more sunburnt Swedes than you do actually Thai people. It's just too touristy for me. It's just lost its authenticity, in my opinion, a place like Thailand. And one other thing is, you're always just going to be a farang, in my opinion. That's the Thai word for foreigner. You can't really blend in. The language is too damn difficult, and you look so different, and it's tough. And a lot of people are just going to look at you like a big walking sack of money. But in a place like Ecuador, there's people of all colors, and it's quite easy to blend in with just the little bit of language skills, and obviously Spanish is a very learnable language if you apply yourself. What about Italy, like where my grandfather's from and where I still have a bunch of family, in the beautiful city of Ascoli, straight across from the boot from Rome. Really spectacular beaches and a beautiful little town. But and that's some legit Italian pizza right there. Not like we do it in the States. I mean, it's super thin usually in Italy. But for me, Italy, just like Thailand, it's also kind of a sellout. You know, they're kind of a sellout. It's kind of lost its authenticity, especially in the big cities where, you walk around and you just see more Asian people than Italian people, and it's weird in Rome, Florence, Venice, and those places. But in the small towns of Italy, it's like walking through a living museum or a mausoleum. But you spend a little time there, and it's actually quite depressing because they're actually all dying or already dead. With just a few really old people who are slowly dying off. And it's kind of weird and creepy the more time you spend in these towns. Obviously, a little bit of time is really cool and really neat, but the more time you spend, it's kind of like, eh. I started my college in Hawaii at the UH of Manoa, University of Hawaii, Manoa, fighting rainbows, go rainbows. But you know, I was there about a year, long enough to learn things, little things like the sand at Waikiki is not real sand, it's all been shipped in. And it's true that Hawaii has these amazing colors I've never seen anywhere else, these greens in the mountains and these blues that the ocean has, and it's just the feeling you have in Hawaii is pretty special. You just sit on a bench to eat a sandwich, and all these little colorful birds will start coming up around you begging for crumbs. It's a pretty special place, Hawaii, and it's got beautiful sun, but it's for whatever reason it's not too bright. Just a little bit of sunscreen, you're good. And it does rain, but just for like a half hour a day, and that's it, and you're good. So it's a very special place, but it's not cheap, right? It's quite expensive to live. And another big negative of Hawaii, kind of similar to Thailand, is when you realize this when you live there, or when you really start exploring around these nooks and crannies of the island and the islands, is that you're just a haole, and you'll always be just a haole, which is the word for outsider. Not just white people, but outsider in general. You're just a haole in Hawaii, and you kind of get this feeling of, okay, like they like tourists, but give me the money. They just like the tourist money, and then they want the tourists to leave. I kind of got that feeling in these little towns in Hawaii. There's a real resentment, maybe even hate, I don't know, towards outsiders, and you feel it when you travel around Hawaii, and it's a big reason not to live there. Like, this was my favorite beach that I could moped to from where I was living, Waimanalo. A spectacular beach, but you really feel it there too. Just that resentment towards outsiders. If you think a place like Ecuador is bad, you should try traveling to a place like India or even living there. It's just super cutthroat and a big reason not to live there. There's also other things like, could you ever truly assimilate into the culture? Probably not. Like, even finding love or whatever would be tough because most people, like the people in my office, it's still hardcore traditional, and they almost all had arranged marriages, not just with Indians, but also within their caste system. Like, it's super weird like that and traditional. So I don't know if India would be a place I could live like long term. So in conclusion, the 4 reasons I chose Ecuador was the weather. Like where I live on the outskirts of Quito, it's mild and steady all year long, not too hot, not too cold, but warm. T-shirt and shorts every day of the year, but in the daytime, and in the nighttime it cools off just enough where you need a blanket or two, and it's really comfortable to sleep. And you're just above the mosquito line, so you don't have to worry about that. The cost of living in Ecuador, I won't get too into that in this video, but it's super cheap comparatively, even within South America and within the world, you know. And the single life, when I first moved here, that I was into that. I'm not single at the moment, but it was very good uh, for foreign people to meet a significant other. Let's put it that way. And what about the money making opportunities? Because I'm kind of on the younger side, and I need a way to make a living. That was important to me. And you know, when you visit places like the Middle East and Asia, you kind of get that feeling of, you know, they want foreigners to come, spend money, and then they want you to leave. You know, like in China, you can't buy land as a foreigner, but you can buy apartments or whatever. It's weird. And like places like Dubai, you can only buy in a certain section of town if you're a foreigner, and the rest no. It's kind of weird. But in Ecuador, foreigners have, even with just a passport, have all the rights of a citizen for buying property, starting businesses, doing whatever you want to do. It's wide open for you. So for me, these were the four reasons I chose Ecuador above all those other places where I had lived previously to Ecuador. I'm Mr. Second Passport. Don't forget to subscribe below and ring the bell in order to be notified of more videos just like this. Talk to you later.